And welcome to episode 3 of the NHL Lowdown. I'm Jeremy Schooler. We have a lot to cover after the first week of the NHL season, this shortened 56 game season with the 4 new divisions where each game means so much more, with 24 less games than a normal season. So, season starting last week, or just 5 days ago, and most teams have played 2 to 3 games, except a few teams. Winnipeg only played 1 game playing right now. Dallas has not started their season because of COVID outbreak issues, and of course that will be an issue throughout the season, unfortunately, most likely. But some teams having played 2 games against the same team in the same city, unusual. That doesn't happen in a normal schedule. Um, Philadelphia starting 2 games with Pittsburgh, um, with the Flyers, my pick to win the Mass Mutual East Division, swept the Penguins, beating them by multiple goals each time. Already with a +6 goal differential through 2 games, really blowing the Penguins out of the water. The Flyers still my pick to win the East Division. Washington, 2 wins in Buffalo, and then they played Pittsburgh yesterday. We were able to get 1 point in overtime. An overtime loss yesterday. But that's definitely going to be the toughest division, the Eastern Division, with Washington, Philadelphia, Boston, both New York teams, and Pittsburgh really all being playoff contenders, and only 4 of them are going to be able to make it. So really, New Jersey and Buffalo, in my view, the only 2 teams that are definite outsiders looking in and wouldn't deserve to make the playoffs. But with no wild cards this year, just 4 teams from each division making the playoffs. In the Central Division, of course, that's the quirk with Dallas, who is one of the better teams in the division, having won the Western Conference last year, not having played a game yet, and um, they have not played a game yet. They still have some COVID issues that they're working on. Their first game is scheduled for 4 days from now against Nashville, but who knows if that will end up happening. Tampa Bay has looked fantastic so far. The defending Stanley Cup champions, beating Chicago handily twice to start the season, and not raising their Stanley Cup banner, waiting till they have fans back in the arena to do that. But the Central Division with Tampa, Nashville, Florida has kind of looked iffy a little bit, but they got a big win over Chicago yesterday. Really, it's going to come down to Dallas because they're going to start the season late. They're going to have to play a lot of back-to-back games to try and make up the games that they've missed. They'll start the season about 4 or 5 games behind most of the rest of the division and the league. But we'll see how that turns out. Out in the West, Vegas 2-0 with 4 points, same as Minnesota. Minnesota starting off the season with the LA Kings, and for teams in this division, there are 3 teams in this division that didn't even make the 2014 bubble last year. And 24 or 31 teams make the bubble, and none of the California teams have made it. And all those California teams, they're a combined 1-3 right now. So they have continued kind of their lack of success thus far. But for any teams in this division, St. Louis and Colorado are pretty much locks to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to battle for the top spot in the division. And they've already played this year a couple times, but other than them, the rest of the division is up for grabs. I just think at most one of those California teams will make it, probably none. But I want to touch on the Blues Avalanche real quick. They played 3 days ago after the Blues beat the Avalanche to start the season. Blues won in Colorado. Colorado, the top odds to win the Stanley Cup in the whole league this year. So Blues win game 1 in Colorado, and the next day, the Avalanche, after a 0-0 first period, scored 4 goals in each of the final 2 periods and beat the Blues 8-0. So that really just shows their offensive firepower, just firing on all cylinders for the Avalanche. Just in that one, being able to beat a team that is not even just one of the better teams in the league, but one of the better teams defensively. So that the Avalanche were able to win 8-0 over a team like St. Louis, having just signed Torrey Krug and Jordan Bennington in goal. And the Avalanche getting goals. I mean, you can see from Andre Burakovsky, Mikko Rantanen, Nazem Kadri, Devin Taves, Nathan McKinnon, Gabe Landeskog. It kind of just goes down the line, just the depth that the Avalanche have in goal and in scoring. But really impressive on that front. Also, of Alexander Ovechkin, of course, starting the season a little bit less than 100 goals behind Gordie Howe, which means about 185 or so behind Wayne Gretzky, and Ovechkin having already won Stanley Cup that he was eluding him for most of his careers. Next biggest thing is completing what many thought at one time to be impossible for someone to catch Wayne Gretzky in goals. And Alex Ovechkin, of course, very unlucky, losing 24 games this season, losing about 11 or so at the end of last season. That's, losing about 20, 25 goals probably that he would have had, in addition to the lockout that it was his rookie year. So he's, starting off bit unlucky, bit of a disadvantage, but the Ovechkin goal watch is very much on as he works to catch Wayne Gretzky, which he would probably need at least 4 or 5 years left and at least 2 or 3 more elite years to do so. Ovechkin only 1 goal this year, scoring yesterday against Pittsburgh, but going to need to pick it up with more than 1 goal in 3 games to start the season for him. In addition, today being, at least in the United States, Martin Luther King Day, it's also, oddly enough, the anniversary of Willie O'Ree, the 68th anniversary of Willie O'Ree playing in his first NHL game. Willie O'Ree, of course, being the first Black player in the NHL. So wanted to touch on Willie O'Ree a little bit first, because Willie O'Ree becoming the first Black player playing in the NHL in 1958, he didn't have all that great of a career. He was, he's a Hall of Famer as a builder, not for any playing abilities, didn't set any records, but the fact that he did what he did and then stayed in the game for 50 plus years, working around the game as an advocate for getting players involved and spreading hockey to minority communities, very important. Especially, I want to share something about Willie O'Ree as he deservedly in the Hall of Fame for all of his work in spreading hockey across the country and across Canada, of course. So one thing he is well known for in Washington, D.C., my hometown, that he was very involved in the Fort DuPont Cannons, the oldest minority hockey program in the country. It's an inner city hockey program in Washington, which Willie O'Ree and numerous Black players from around the NHL have played with. So very important. Willie O'Ree staying in the game for more than 60 years, close to 70 years since he was a player, to working around the NHL and across hockey. And he, of course, has the NHL Community Award named after him, the Willie O'Ree Community Award, which is given to the player who has worked to make a positive impact on his or her community, culture, or society and make people better through hockey, which Willie O'Ree has certainly done. So very, very important for him, important to remember his debut 68 years ago today. And Willie O'Ree still alive and still working to spread hockey and make it wider in popularity and play and more opportunities for it. Willie O'Ree, 85 years old. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. But also just looking at the standings in the NHL compared to what was expected. So in the Central and East divisions, it's pretty expected. New Jersey has won 1-0-1 for them so far, playing Boston yesterday. But Philadelphia and Washington are pretty expected at the top. Tampa Bay, Nashville at the top in the Central. Chicago at the bottom. As I said before, Dallas is what it's going to come down to, since they are probably the best team in that division, or the second best team, since of course it's first time in the history of NHL and probably in any sport that 2 teams that played in the championship against each other the year before are now in the same division. So Dallas and Tampa, I think that division will come down to. We'll see how Dallas this season goes. But in the West, Vegas and Minnesota with 4 points to start the year. Of course, Minnesota getting those 2 points in LA. And for teams like Minnesota, Arizona, and the California teams, which, as I said, I think a maximum of one of them, but in all likelihood, none will make the playoffs. Teams like Minnesota and Arizona, they're going to need to get as many points as possible against those California teams, because they're not going to pick up those points against Colorado, St. Louis, and Vegas in all likelihood. So Minnesota and Arizona, assuming that St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas take the top 3 spots in the division, Minnesota and Arizona will need to fight with each other for that final spot. And I think either of them are capable of that. I think they're both certainly better than all 3 California teams, although San Jose's looked good this year and they've already beaten Arizona, but Minnesota getting 4 huge points on that trip out west to Los Angeles. And the Wild looked good in those games as well. And also the Wild have the Ducks and the Sharks coming up, so they have a lot of chances to start the season, the first 6 or so games, to get a bunch of points to start off. So that will be a big opportunity for the Wild. Looking into the Canadian division, the North, the one division with fewer teams. My pick originally to win the division at the beginning of the year was Vancouver. Not a good start to the year for them. 1-2, only 2 points. And Toronto's looked really good. Toronto was the odds-on favorite to win the division. 4 points to start the year for them. And then Montreal, Calgary, Winnipeg, Ottawa, and Edmonton. And in the games going on right now, Toronto is actually beating Winnipeg. Although Winnipeg, the game's in Toronto, Winnipeg has gotten points or won or lost in overtime, gotten points in all but one of the last 15 games in Toronto. So the Jets seem to have the Leafs number. And the Jets are another team similar to Minnesota and Arizona. If the Jets are going to make the playoffs in this division, they're going to have to get wins like this, or at least pick up points when they're playing teams like Toronto. Also, Buffalo beating Philadelphia 1-0 to start out there. Philadelphia over Buffalo, but Buffalo looking very bad to start the year. There are 2 losses against Washington, but Philadelphia, as good as they looked, been able to be shut down by Buffalo. That one's 1-0 at the end of the first period. San Jose and St. Louis also is tied at the end of the first period, 0-0, and I mean that would be big if San Jose has any hope at doing really anything this year. They're going to need to get some upsets, and this one just playing in St. Louis is a good place to start for that. Also, looking at some of the stats across the league, what we see is Steven Stamkos already with 5 points to start the year. Of course, kind of a huge story with him playing just one game in the bubble, and he played just one shift of one game in the entire bubble. It was in the Stanley Cup final. He scored a goal, and then he was injured, as he had been dealing with for a while, and didn't play again. But the Tampa Bay Lightning captain, winning the Stanley Cup despite playing one shift in the bubble, and he scored a goal. Now he starts the year 5 points. Big start to the year for him, and as well. Philadelphia, as I talked about, their huge start to the year with two pretty much blowout wins over Pittsburgh. Travis Konechny, also 5 points. Leon Draisaitl, John Tavares, and obviously Connor McDavid, who hands down best player in the world. I mean, he has had a couple highlight reel goals already this year, just dipping through the Toronto defense a couple days ago. The rookie watch a little bit. Kirill Kaprizov in Minnesota has looked absolutely amazing. I mean, given his expectations. The Russian 23-year-old scored in overtime to beat the Kings in the first night of the season for the Wild. So huge win for them. And Kirill Kaprizov really looking like a keeper for the Wild. He already has 4 points to start the year. On goalies, the thing with the goalies is that I think with no preseason and limited training camp, there's either goalies or skaters were going to kind of be put at more of a disadvantage. It was tough to tell at first, but as we see to start the year, as the average goals per game has been skyrocketing. I mean, in the past, it really hasn't, just in this era, as the goalies have gotten better. But we're looking at some of the scores since the season started. I mean, first night of the season, Flyers over Penguins 6-3, Leafs over Habs 5-4, 5-1 Lightning, Blackhawks like 5-3, Canucks Oilers, all very high scoring games, and that's going to continue the first few days. 6-4, a few shutouts, but 4-3. I mean, there's been a very high scoring game, so it seems like goalies have definitely been more rusty than skaters to start the year in the first week. But a few huge matchups coming up this week as once again, teams limiting travel by playing back-to-back games in the same city. And tonight or tomorrow on tap, we have the Hudson River rivalry, the Devils and the Rangers. The Devils have looked pretty good to start the year. The Rangers had a flop opening night against the Islanders and then beat the Islanders 5-0. So really the Rangers have been all over the place. And Jack Hughes, the Devils are really going to need him to kind of get going if they really have hope of doing anything this year, which they probably don't, but even in the near future, as he was what they're building a team around, first overall pick. So the Devils are going to need Jack Hughes to get going. He's already got a few points to start the year, but Devils, Rangers, then Sabres, Flyers playing again tomorrow. The Sabres, as I said, beating the Flyers surprisingly right now, 1-0. But Capitals, Penguins, and Blackhawks, Panthers both playing the second night of their back-to-backs. Jets, Senators will be interesting as the Jets going on a back-to-back from Toronto to Ottawa on their Ontario swing. But the Jets are going to need to pick up these points because the Jets are kind of one of those bubble playoff teams, and they're going to need to beat teams like the Senators. They play them 9 times this year. They're probably going to need to get about 15 out of those 18 points over Ottawa. Detroit having no playoff expectations this year, but really just after a horrendously bad season last year and then losing the lottery, couldn't have been more unlucky for them. Probably if they can finish outside of the bottom 5 in the league, that'd be a win for them. And Detroit, playing Columbus yesterday. As they play again tomorrow, the first game of their back-to-back yesterday, they lost that game, but Detroit getting a win over Carolina to start the year. So Detroit has a good chance, I think, not to do anything dangerous in the really in the playoffs or to get there or anything. But Detroit has looked a little better, so they could probably finish. Let's say in a 56 game season, maybe 50 points, 45 to 50 points. That'd probably be a good season for them. And Bobby Ryan, in his huge comeback last year, after coming back with Ottawa after his off the ice issues, starting with Detroit this season. So he's looked pretty good too. So a lot of bright spots to start the year. But we will see how the next week of the season goes. And 56 game season, it's going to fly by a lot faster than a normal season. So hopefully, the Dallas Stars can get started later this week, and then we can get the rest of the season going. And until then, I'll see you next week. But that's your recap and the NHL lowdown for this week. Today, Monday, January 18th. And we'll see you next week.